Welcome to Grow Your Credit Union, the podcast where credit union leaders gather, learn, and grow. I'm your host, Joshua Barkley, and joining me today in the co-host chair is the talk of Texas, Becky Reed. Becky, what's up?
Howdy, y'all.
Howdy, y'all. Becky, I was just at a conference in San Diego. I'm not going to say what it was because it was a banking conference. It was my first one. Not going to get into the rift between credit unions and banks too much on this episode, but I will say I had a really interesting conversation at dinner where we were going around the table asking each other, what did you want to be when you were growing up? Because Becky, all I know about you is this big crypto credit union leader. Like, I have no idea what you actually wanted to be when you were growing up.
Well, crypto didn't even exist when I was growing up. And I certainly didn't know what a credit union was. I wanted to be a veterinarian. So we had animals. So we had goats, we had rabbits, we had chickens, we had horses. And I really loved horses. And so I wanted to be a equine vet.
And what kind of took you off that beaten path then, if I can ask, Becky?
Well, this is going to kind of be a sad story. How do you always get these things out of me, Josh? So my paternal parents, so my grandparents, lived with us, and we had a few acres here in Texas, and my grandpa was the one who kind of took care of the animals. Now, my grandparents were Depression era folks, grew up during the Depression in very rural Arkansas. And my grandpa discouraged me from being a large animal vet because I was a woman. And he said that my physical prowess was not sufficient enough to handle a large animal. Now, this is when I was riding a 1,200-pound horse when I was 90 pounds soaking wet, and, had no problem controlling that animal. But anyway, so that was what he said. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of equine vets are female these days. So yeah, I've even met a female farrier or two. So, it's with horses, certainly being, heavier physical stature is beneficial, but it's really more a mind over matter when it comes to large animals like that.
But I guess there is a little bit of a silver lining here, which is that we needed you in this space. So we have to look at the bright side. We have a good show today, Becky. She has never been on the show before, brand new guest. Let's welcome her. She's the president and CEO of Valley First Credit Union, Catherine Davis. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Can I add to that story? So we have goats. I live out in the country, and we have to have a farrier come out, and it is always a female. So shout out to the ladies.
Many of us believe that the more projects we take on, the more impactful we are. But a recent Harvard Business Review article argues that strategically eliminating projects is the only way to free your people from being buried under the work that prevents them from focusing on what actually matters. A 2024 survey found that 44% of organizations stop projects only occasionally, 26% rarely, and 7% of organizations never stop projects at all. The same research, I found this interesting, Becky, suggests that the majority of companies could cut half of their projects or even 70% of their current projects without hurting performance. Now, this article and this survey was really interesting to me because credit unions typically run very lean, small teams, limited bandwidth, which means when the wrong projects stay on the list, the right ones suffer. Catherine, how often do you and your leadership team actually stop and ask, should we kill this project?
So we've been working on this the last couple years. And so I will say we've gotten a lot tighter on it and are very deliberate about what we're doing quarterly. So I feel like we've gotten better about what's going into the shoot. We've killed a few, but I would say that's a really difficult thing to do, right? People get excited about what they're doing. They want to improve the credit union, the department. So it's hard to kill them. I think we're getting tighter on what's going into the funnel and making sure they get done and being mindful and purposeful of how many projects happen quarterly. I think that's been a big win for us, frankly, just this year. We're not even done with Q1, right?
Becky, do you agree with the general premise of this Harvard Business Review study, which is essentially that organizations are taking on too many projects, it's burying teams, we're not really paying attention to which projects have the highest leverage? Do you agree with that general premise?
Well, it's the law of diminishing returns, right? So the more that you do or the more that you have, the less you actually get accomplished. And we see it on the vendor side of the house. I call it project fatigue. There's so many credit unions that come back and they say, we just can't fit it in this year. And so a lot of fintechs that are selling into the credit union space and the community banks are similar. You're either a must-have, a need-to-have, or a nice-to-have. And if you're in that nice-to-have category, you might be delayed years because the credit union's like, I love what you have. We need that. I want to do that. But these must-haves and these need-to-haves come first. And so you get to the back of the line. And I think that many times, too, and human beings fall prey to this, is we think that a tool or a software is going to solve a particular problem. I'm going to talk about core processing for a moment because we hear so many, and this has eternally been a thing, right? Our core is terrible. We need to do a core conversion. And then you hear people go, but I don't want to do a core conversion because, it takes so much time and effort and yada, yada, yada. All those things are true. But the approach we took at Lone Star was our core was only as good as our network. We could get a brand new core, but it wasn't going to perform any better if two things didn't happen. Our network wasn't able to accommodate its agility and speed. And number two, if we built it the way our old core was. It required taking a new perspective on kind of that project management and make it more about a roadmap as opposed to project-based.
So effectively, Becky, it's from what I understand, you drop a lot of good gems there. It seems to me that a lot of people just need to evaluate why they're doing the project and sort of look at the root cause of why am I doing this project? What are the results of this project going to be? I really need to analyze what I'm doing before I do it.
Yeah, and I would love to hear Catherine's take on how do you guys decide what projects stay and what projects kind of get put on the sidelines?
Yeah. So we've got 4 strategies, and those projects have to fit into one of those strategies and have to be moving the organization forward. So I love your comment, like on the nice to have, like we've got a list of those, and that's the someday, but like, are they moving the organization forward, and do they fit within the strategies and the budget that we have for each year as well? And that gets to be tough in organizations, right? Just because, again, people want to do the right thing and they want to deliver their best. But it truly is a pick and choose. But I think for us, it's like, what strategy is it furthering and where does it fit within that? And you kind of got to juggle too. Like, they all can't be the behemoth 18-month project, right? That you're kicking off at the beginning of 2026, right? So it's kind of, what's the really large ones? What are the mid ones? And where are the small ones? But I think the more specific you can be and how it aligns to strategy, those are the wins.
Brian Sosha, a former loan officer at Mass Mutual Federal Credit Union in Springfield, Massachusetts, quietly raised his own home equity line of credit 19 times over 5 years, from $135,000 to nearly $1 million by sneaking onto his coworkers' computers while they were stepped away from their desks. Here's what I found hard to believe, Becky. When Mass Mutual Federal Credit Union finally caught him and closed the account, Brian said in court that he saw a zero balance in his online banking app, and he genuinely thought it was just gone, done, no harm, no foul. 5 years of fraud just swept under the rug with no penalties. Then the FBI knocked on his door. He was recently sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. Catherine, I want to talk about the trust angle on this, and then we'll go into the novelty of how ridiculous this story really is. When something like this goes public, how does a credit union rebuild trust? Let's forget externally, but internally with its own members, with its own staff. Thoughts there?
Yeah, I think the internal piece is spot on. You've got to start with your staff, right? So what happened? Like, how did that happen? What controls were you missing? And I think being honest with it, right? And then what are you going to do to change it? And, how does it take all employees to be part of that? I mean, that's a regrouping with your internal team. Like, how did we have a coworker, an employee, be able to do that 19 times? So I think it's an acknowledgement of the gaps and then what you're going to do. Obviously, this went public for this credit union. And so you've got to arm your staff in terms of being comfortable and confident that this isn't going to happen again. And so how are they going to answer those questions? I mean, I definitely wouldn't put your teller in front of the media, but I think they've got to be able, that member sitting across from them, they better be prepared. Like, this is members' money. And so how are you going to make sure that's not happening again? So I think you got to tackle it internal, and you got to tackle it quickly.
Becky, sometimes I don't ask you a question because whatever's stewing in your head is much more interesting. When you hear this story, what comes to mind for you?
I think what comes to mind is not that happened, because those things do happen. And there are so many controls that we have in credit unions to make sure that wasn't happening. And they're not new, by the way. You're supposed to look at transactions that happen on employee accounts. I mean, regardless of if another employee did it or there's things that are missing. But where my head goes is when these things happen, and it's the same everywhere. This is the same for regulators. Kyle Hopman says this all the time. He's like, no examiner gets patted on the back when a credit union is a Camel 1 or 2, right? But the minute something happens, this is an example of one. The minute this happens, guess where they look? The examiner. Why didn't the auditor catch it? Why didn't the examiner catch it? And now, they're like, holy cow, it didn't break down because of me, but I'm the one who's getting blamed. It happens when credit unions get conserved. It happens, when they fail for whatever reason. It happens when there's fraud. The auditor, the examiner is always getting blamed. And then what happens is there's this knee-jerk reaction where now we tighten things up too much, right? Now we go to the other side where maybe before there was maybe a little too much trust. Maybe somebody wasn't checking things as often as they should, or they saw something, they didn't say something, right? Then you swing to the whole opposite end where now it's like you've locked the whole system down, and the employees can't even help a member anymore because everything is so locked down because we're so afraid that this is going to happen again. And so to me, it really goes to how much do I trust my employees and how much risk it's a risk management discussion. How much risk am I willing to take in order to make sure that the employees have the tools that they need to do their job without overburdensome oversight, and giving them the autonomy and the freedom to do what's best for the member without taking advantage of the system. That's where my head goes, because the minute you hand a teller a $20,000 drawer with cash in it that they have the key to, there's an amount of trust that goes with that. They could walk out the door with that money their first day. They could. Same with the loan officer, right? I'm giving them a pen to approve millions of dollars in loans. And how do I know for sure they're not just approving their friends' loans? So there's a give and a take there, but I would just caution folks to avoid the knee-jerk reaction and, swinging too far to the other side.
Becky, can I hop in on that? Don't you have, as you think about like ethics and, thank God these are sort of far and few between, but it's like, how are we even hiring a person that would come in and do something like that? And like the ones that shock me the most are like, right, we've got the CEO embezzling, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, why would you even, like, why are you even in our industry? That's members' money. And so I think too around, you're spot on the trust, but it's like, are we like bringing in like the right people? And like, can we, like, how do we screen for that in a different way? Right.
Well, I don't know that you can, first of all. Second of all, what usually happens in these types of fraud situations is the person does it one time because they're under some particular stress. So there was a stressor for that individual, and they saw a way to relieve the stress by committing fraud. So, you know, that could be taking $20 over the weekend and paying it back on Monday. That could be, you know, stealing supplies because I don't have enough money to pay for toilet paper, so I'm going to steal the credit union's toilet paper. I mean, I know that's a silly example, but a lot of these things start this way. It's seeing an opportunity and then saying, I'm just going to do it this one time. And then they don't get caught. And then it happens over and over again. And so I think really, I don't think that we can screen enough at the beginning. People will make up their own stories and justification as to why it's okay to do. But having those simple things in place, I mean, a simple report that somebody looked at to see a transaction on an employee loan would have stopped that the very first time.
Redwood Credit Union in Santa Rosa, California, just crossed $1 million in total donations to the Redwood Empire Food Bank. That is a partnership that has 400 plus volunteer hours a year, and they've helped provide 282,000 meals in 2025 alone. Credit unions are doing a lot of really good work in the community, but if the only people who know about it, Becky, are other credit union professionals reading CU Times, I feel like something has gone wrong in our communication strategy, particularly when I was at that banking event and I'm hearing bankers trash credit unions. And you know what the bankers never brought up about credit unions? They never bring up our strong community involvement. Catherine, is there a part of our credit union culture that's almost allergic to self-promotion? And is that humility actually hurting us right now?
That's a great question. I mean, some of this gets back to resource management, you guys, right? Like if you think about how big are our marketing teams and communication teams, right? So I think, you know, getting that word out, I think also just like pulling those stories, like I'll admit for myself, sometimes I hear about some of the amazing things that we've done because I'm out in the community and a member came to tell me. Right. So I oftentimes think that our staff, they're doing that good work and don't even realize how amazing it is. So yeah, I think there is a bit of a humble component to our industry. I think there's a resource constraint, but I think there's also just sort of this, as you pull it all together, like do credit unions really realize the magnitude if you put those numbers together? I was poking around on something personally. We've done a lot in the space of small dollar lending. It's really, really important in my community. And I just kind of kept poking. We did over $10 million of that last year. And you guys, that's huge because that's really keeping people away from the payday lenders. But that wasn't on one single report. Like I kind of was looking for something else and started to piece that together because it's a multitude of products. So I don't think we do a good job of having our systems tell us those stories, right? Like it's literally almost kind of accidental. I'll say one more thing though. In the case of Redwood, they are very beloved in their local community. So I guarantee that their local community knows that. If you look at their organic growth year over year, it's from being that community. But I'm with you. Our industry is very challenged with it. Very challenged.
Becky, thoughts on our accomplishments, what we do for the community? Are we loud enough? Is this a messaging problem very similar to what we have with explaining what a credit union is in the first place?
I was going to equate it to that. You know, even our advocacy agencies talk about open your eyes to a credit union, making sure you have a piece of the pie, and they focus really on the taxation. We don't want to be taxed like the banks, but you know what? Let me tell you something. The banks, a lot of them have a law that's called the Community Reinvestment Act that they are required to do stuff in the community and to track it and report it. Our regulator doesn't require that unless you're a CDFI organization. Even if you're low income designated, you're not necessarily required to report the stuff that you're actually doing in the community. But where the rubber really meets the road with financial cooperatives is our local community roots. And it struck me, you talked about banks a little bit. It struck me, I did a banking event where I spoke, and I'm in the banking organization for that state. They had like a little conference area, and I'm walking in, and the halls were lined with small bank board members, CEOs, executives. These folks were an integral part to their community, right? They were helping farmers. They were helping mostly business people because that's what banks do. Credit unions tend to help consumers more, straight to consumer instead of businesses. But regardless, both of those are the lifeblood of small communities. Credit unions, maybe because we're not required to, and I can see the banks, being flippant about it because they're like, well, show me what they're doing. Here's what we're doing, because they have to measure it and they have to report it. We kind of don't. And so because of that, maybe we just aren't paying enough attention to it and not telling the community enough about it. To me, that's your best marketing. Sending a person to the local Kiwanis Club, sending a person to the Lions Club, sending a person to, give that check to a school for a scholarship or whatever it is, then telling people about it. And don't put it on LinkedIn, guys. Your community is not on LinkedIn. All right. So, send out a newsletter to your members or be visible in the community or whatever. But yeah, a LinkedIn post showing a check to your local food bank is awesome, but that's not where your members are.
Spot on, spot on. I just love by sending like your employees out, right? If you think about it, there is no better marketers or brand ambassadors of your organization, like get them involved in the community.
All right, that brings us to the end of the show. We're going to do final thoughts and plugs. Catherine, give me your final thoughts, anything that comes to mind about what we discussed today. And if you've got any plugs, feel free to plug them.
Obviously, our industry is always evolving, and I appreciate the chance to dialogue with you guys. I think more of us should just be dialoguing on these things collectively. And from a plug perspective, Valley First is always hiring, so please come check us out. We are in the northern part of the Central Valley in beautiful California. So valleyfirstcu.org. And then also just say on a personal note, I'm celebrating 31 years in credit unions this year. So I'm a lifelong co-opper, and it is my mission just to help people in this industry. So if there's something I can do for anybody that's listening today, connect with me either online or through LinkedIn. You can find me at Catherine Kulp Davis. I'm very, very much about promoting people within this industry. I want to make sure it stays thriving. So anything I can do to support that, reach out.
Becky, final thoughts?
Well, Catherine mentioned something that has really been on my mind a lot lately, and that's co-op. I had somebody, I can't say who, this person told me that they really feel like gap accounting was a bad thing for credit unions. And they said that it made credit unions think like our for-profit counterparts, like banks, because the accounting methodology, the accounting treatment to our financials was similar. And I was like, okay, I can understand that. I mean, of course, a not-for-profit, the financials are a bit different from a GAAP perspective than a for-profit organization. But what really struck me is when they said, we really should act like a cooperative, not a bank. And I went, wow, that's interesting, because there are lots of cooperatives in the world, right? A lot of their agriculture cooperatives, there are cooperatives, healthcare cooperatives, there are, gym membership cooperatives, right? There are grocery stores that are cooperatives that are owned by their employees. And being able to start a co-op is not the same as starting a bank or a credit union, a financial cooperative. Anyway, if you'll notice kind of some of the stuff I'm posting on LinkedIn, it's kind of in that vein, because we all talk about consolidation in the industry. Banks are having it as well. The difference is there are de novo banks being started. There's not a lot, but there are, because there's a financial incentive to do so. In the credit union space, There's not a lot of credit unions because there's not a financial incentive to do so. The minute you open the doors, the capital that's been donated that is not tax deductible belongs to the members. And you have to maintain that PCA capital threshold, right? That 7% of your assets. So you can't grow very fast. So it's really kind of a catch-22 and something that I'm really going to start getting on my soapbox about, because consolidation is one thing, but not having new entrants is quite another.
Becky, how do people get in touch with you?
LinkedIn, baby.
LinkedIn, baby. I want to give a special thanks to our guest, Catherine Davis. Special thanks to my co-host, Becky Reed. And a special thanks to you, our listeners, for continuing to support and listen to another episode of Grow Your Credit Union. If you like the show, please follow us on your podcast player of choice. If you want to be a guest or would like to talk about sponsorship opportunities, head to growyourcreditunion.com to learn more. Thank you for listening. We will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.